which is leveraging spatial epidemiology for public health interventions. Dr. Terry Entry's vision is to bridge the gap between advanced geospatial research and scalable industry application. So with this profile, we can all attest to the fact that we don't have any better option or a facilitator to handle today's topic, the infrastructure mapping and data management. Audience, colleagues, this I introduce to you our facilitator for
Engineer, your mic is muffling. I don't know if people can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for the
Hello
introduction.
again.
Yes, your line was muffling. Like you come in and out. But yeah, I think what was important was delivered. So that's fine with me. Thank you very much for the introduction. I really appreciate it. Okay, so if I can share my screen.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Okay. Please, can you all hear me?
Yes,
Good. Clear?
Yeah.
No in and outs.
everything is okay.
Oh, good. Good. Africans Network is doing me a good favor today. So this is my second time here, and I appreciate GGS always giving me the platform. Okay, so today the session will be on infrastructure mapping and management. This is very big, but I'll try to narrow it to my experiences and what I've gathered in academia so far.
Yes, I don't know. Fiona, sim.
Okay, so talking about the infrastructure, we wouldn't have to go far. We would try the closest objects that we can relate with. So we can start with our homes, which we have buildings as infrastructures. We can talk about workplaces that have fanciful storage structures or glass buildings. If we want to go far, we can talk about power generating systems. We can talk about aircraft. And en route to our various workplaces, we can also talk about uh, traffic controllers or the bridges we fly on. And then we can talk about defense systems. These are all infrastructures that we can consider. So if you highlight these infrastructures, what is common is that all these structures sort of interact. They need each other to thrive in our physical space. The same way we humans also heavily depends on them. But what happens is that all these infrastructures, right from the time of operation, they start to have the original design life diminish. They start to die. And the common logic behind this is that they are not economically replaced in time, or it's not sound to have them implemented, and then the only thing to do is also to just replace them. Sorry, I get feedback. How can I rectify this, Mr. Ting? Okay. Now, wow, can this feedback be rectified? Please, moderator, can you come in? Okay, good. Still. Hello.
Okay, whilst we continue our delivery, let me speak to one of the in charge.
Okay, I think it's better now. I think it was one of the GGS So I
All right,
muted
yeah.
him.
No feedback there.
Muted. Yeah, it's better now. So back to where we were. I'm saying that the logic behind most of these infrastructure dying is because it's not economically sound to just replace them. And so what is the solution is the infrastructure mapping that we are here to do. And generally speaking, infrastructure mapping will be referring to location inspection and monitoring of any engineering infrastructure. So here the key word here is location for all the inspection and monitoring, because clearly other inspections and monitoring have always been carried on, but then this session is just focused on the location part. Then apart from the inspection and monitoring, you would want to also visualize what is happening on the infrastructure, and you want to properly document them. And so this is what happens when it comes to infrastructure mapping. In categories, the infrastructure mapping, we have two strong components. The first component is you want to do the mapping online. This will be as the system is operating, then you are getting a direct observation. So for whatever interest that you're looking for on that structure, or you would want to do an offline observation, which is sort of passive. The activity must go on in the infrastructure before you go to observe it. So these are the two main categories of this infrastructure mapping. Then after your observations, you go to the management side of the data, because of course, if you get the raw data, it doesn't end there. So on the management side, you have what you pay attention to is the storage of the data, the organization, and how we would like to utilize the data. In fact, one of the key outputs for in
Give me.
mapping our infrastructures is to understand the behavior of the infrastructure. We also want to have certainty or a degree of certainty into the performance of these infrastructures before they sort of fail us, or there will be some high cost to replace them. And so collecting the data at the management side, the evaluation is very key, apart from storing and organizing, and then, storing and organizing. So agenda one, you can see that this session is very important, but these are some of the reports that comes out. So in China like this, they average about $43.2 billion trying to maintain or even replace an infrastructure. And was somewhere in 2021. And then in the United States, they are projecting for the next 20 years from 2007 to pay around $1.6 trillion trying to rehabilitate, renew, replace, and then maintain their infrastructure systems. So it's very expensive. And so that is our foe, it's our enemy, that we don't want to use these engineering systems to make our lives better, only for us to incur problem in problem. We have the system, but then in order for the system to run, we have to go and look for money to keep it running again. And so in order to address this foe, these are three main fields that come together to help us fight the enemy. And so in today, modern structural engineering, we have something we call structural health monitoring. We also have something like condition monitoring, non-destructive evaluation techniques. All these things can help you in infrastructure mapping. Then geospatial engineering also come in handy when you are making management and analytics. You would want to do some spatial data analytics. You would want to deploy some geo AI to handle your big data and then report on the conditions of your structure. And then transport engineering, you want to understand the performance of road, the utilities on these roads, how they are all working, to address the movement of people from one place to the other. So these three fields actually marry if you want to look into infrastructure mapping and management. So it's very huge. Again, like I'll retreat that I will limit it to my transport system and then a few of what my students and my research have dived into. And my lab, the lab that I joined, Rhodesia Lab. So I'll talk a little bit about them. The lead for the Rhodesia Lab is Professor Ato. He's doing incredible with us as team members on it. And so some of the use cases for this infrastructure mapping, if you talk about roads, the assets on this road include bridges, tunnels. You want to talk about intersection and the roundabouts. And so the data you collect may include the road ID. So if you pick a segment of the road and give it an identification code. The location, so we would need the X and Y of that road segment. Maybe the length. You could also add something like the road surface type, the defect type, etc., etc. And assets like pipelines, you can also treat it like the road. You handle them as segments, give them a pipeline ID, the material type for that pipeline, the length. All these are infrastructure mapping use cases. Okay. And so for this session, my objective is one, I always like smart things. So I'm focused on intelligent infrastructure, the new vision, and the way of designing and managing civil infrastructure of a nation. And so I also talk about novel technologies. I'll talk about methodologies and management for creating a smart infrastructure mapping. So why is this even important? What is the motivation? Why should we even go smart? It's important for early warning systems. And so if we are stuck in our visual inspection, then the uncertainties remain high for infrastructures that we use. I mean, the safety is there is question mark on the safety whilst we are using it. There is question mark on the cost when it fails. And so it's important that you map your infrastructures, have them sit somewhere for proper rational decisions. Or you can have a certain dynamic response measurement for your infrastructure so that you can look for something like an early warning system. The second thing is if you are mapping your infrastructure, if you have the data, something like a rich data, then you can't be answering questions on the infrastructure behavior. You understand the behavior, and so it's easy to look at the performance. You can even do what we call sensitivity. You can take the input parameters of this infrastructure, try and adjust them to see what's happened as a sort of an event on the infrastructure. The third part is having infrastructure mapping. You can also be proactive if you're a decision maker here, and then you are in charge of certain bridges. I know some of my highway friends who are in charge of bridges. So if you collect more data, then you can be proactive because then the data can speak to you on what is happening on the bridge. Okay. Yes, and so part of the final one will be minimizing uncertainty associated with current visual inspections. So what is dominant in the country or state of the art has always been visual inspection. We deploy the national service personnel, or we ourselves who sit in our vehicles, fly to the infrastructure and then inspect and then collect the data, come back and then make our reports and all that. The truth of the matter is some of these things are not sustainable. If you look at the annual report of the cost involved in having to investigate condition of road for the entire network in the country, these things are very expensive. And so there are technologies that leverage the inspection, making it cheaper, and then also minimizing uncertainty for certain road segments to fail before they are attended to. So these are motivations behind why we should join the new technologies and then new ways of mapping our infrastructures. We have to catch up. That's the idea for the session. We have to catch up. In other parts of our world, people are already doing well with these technologies. So our data needs, where does it all start from? We start with the data. So based on the focus of the infrastructure that you're looking at, maybe you're looking at the condition, you're looking at how it performs, you're looking at the capacity, the safety behind it. It depends on all these things. That will influence how you should map and the data you should collect. And so when you're collecting the data, you pay attention to the structure itself, the data you can get from, and then the environment. Maybe the wind have influenced, the temperature have influenced, and then the policies guided it, which will affect your management decisions. And so when you collect all these data, one important thing is database. So database become the central feature for all the mapping management you do. Okay. So with advancements in computer and software technologies, there have been improvements in the amount of data that can be stored and then readily accessed. So when it comes to data needs, you know you have to focus on the infrastructure and then what you want it to, your mapping should report on. Then we can now dive into database, which is the central feature for mapping and managing these infrastructures. So in terms of data collection, there are several sensors there. Like I said, I will limit it to modern new technology. So we have IoT sensors. Earlier in our earlier slides, I highlighted that there are two main components, the passive and active one. Active will be online where the infrastructure is reporting as it operates. So that sensors we have, the IoT sensors, we place them on the facility for where loads are being applied, they report as response in real time. Okay, so if there are any events that is happening, you can't have it. So if you take it for instance, an elevator in your BIM structure. So you've designed a BIM model, a 3D model of an infrastructure that you have a nice database linked to it with all the facility utilities inside the story building. And so IoT sensor is planned on the elevator. Every time it moves, there is always a response measurement being recorded for the elevators being used. And so for unique events that happen, maybe fluctuated lights or maybe there is this kilogram threshold. People who are not supposed to enter the elevator, they've entered more than the threshold. All these things will be on your system for you to look at the performance of the elevator. So it's easy to also tell, how your elevator is performing. And if there is anything to do, considering time pass, how the elevator is working to the current response you are having, if there is a need to attend to it, you will attend to it before it fails. So these are active sensing. The same goes for things like acoustic, if you're using acoustic sensors. If you're also using magnetic fields, they give you vibrations that you can measure with methods like signal processing methods. So signal processing methods can give you states of the condition that you are mapping. Okay. These are all online form of infrastructure mapping. The passive one will be something like drones, LiDAR, photogrammetry, thermal imagery, satellite imagery. These ones don't give you real-time access. They give you after anything could have happened to the infrastructure you are mapping, or it's possible that the infrastructure you are mapping, you have a certain interest that will limit it to these sensors. Okay, so it's if I pick a certain road segment like a Pokwasi interchange, I don't have to know what is happening on Pocosi interchange in real time. But because it's my interest, I can use satellite image to revisit when it was designed and constructed, look at the performances, and then come to this current state of Pocosi interchange with the satellite image, and then tell the inflation and deflation of the performance of that road. So that you don't necessarily need an active sensor to do that. You can use passive sensors like images to handle that. So our next question will be, how will engineers conduct such these studies, like the infrastructure mapping management? How will we do that? Some of the questions that comes in 5 states. You can have you may be wondering the current state of the asset you have. Okay, so that will influence that you pick data on certain things like condition, age, and then the spatial context also matters. You would want to have where the data you are picking are coming from. So that will also require the location of a building. If it's a building that you are mapping. If it's road, then the location of the road segment is also important. The third component will be data sources. So data sources often, when it comes to infrastructure mapping and management, they are disparate. What I mean by disparate is they come from different sources. You cannot have only one sensor giving you all the data requirement that we are talking about. So you would have to dwell on historical data to do some of these things. You need something like field observation to do them. You have to even couple field observation and sensors, maybe passive sensors, or you can even go hybrid where you combine active sensors and passive sensors for your mapping. So for instance, Rhodesia Lab in KNUST, spearheaded by Professor To. I'm a team member on that. So something like we developed a mobile phone application that has a gyroscope to measure vertical acceleration. So you put it on your vehicle dashboard, you drive on the stretch, and then you have your road roughness calculated for you after data is moved to a safe place, a database. Then we also have a satellite, where the satellite will communicate with the phone and learn to find the relationship between what the phone is finding and what satellite images are also showcasing. And when that relationship is established, we don't need to drive on the entire stretch. Satellite image may give you an estimate of what the road roughness look like. So some of the things that Rhodesia is doing is what I just clearly explained to you. And so we also factor in data key parameters. Not all the conditions you pick as data will play a role in your mapping. And so it's important to know what exactly you're looking for and then you collect data on them, because one of the things that decision makers also face is that we often wow. Can we mute the noise? So one of the key things decision makers face, one of the key mistakes some decision makers make is that we are very general in terms of data we are looking for, and so it makes it very expensive to design our infrastructure mapping systems. So key parameters are very, very crucial. You don't have to do everything all at once. And then some data are very derivative, they are latent. So you can pick some to establish relationship to get other data. You don't have to pick everything. And the last thing is for this is also directed to how it's done. You need regulatory policies to implement some of these things. We forget that some of the ministries pick data, they house it, keep it, and other ministries have to also go to the field and pick data, which becomes additional cost to the government. But if there are data standards where there is certain compliance requirement, then we can have a central data hub where something like DVLA is easily connected to, say, anything the Ministry of Highway also have as database. Then we can find where the holes are to fill in terms of collecting data. So regulatory and compliance requirements as policies are really, really important when it comes to infrastructure mapping. So with data acquisition, when it comes to the structure that you are trying to map, you can have it also in two categories, a local mapping and then a global mapping. When it comes to local, for my friends who are into asset management in terms of road, they will call it project level investigation. The global, they will call it a network level investigation. So the local one often is very detailed. You would want to know per the structure you're looking for, the details that is in there. For the global, it's more like an aggregate. You try to use certain few key parameters to indicate which of the structure is doing well or not doing well. So for example, for local, if you are considering road, the project level, you'll be looking out for surrogates, potholes, you'll be looking for such detailed problems that has happened on the road. But for global inspection on road, you just be limited to something like roughness. Of the road surface. Very simple. And these are all like aggregates, or sorry, they are global category for data acquisition. There are also fundamental axioms. Like there are things that we behind all this mapping, they are like our underlying assumptions. And you cannot run away from them. And then if you do run away from them, they will also create issues for the system that you are designing. So one of it is that you cannot say, oh, this structure is newly built, and so you don't have to map it. All structures have inherent problems. The moment that it was constructed, at the moment it starts operating, it means you can do an infrastructure mapping on it. You need to start collecting data. The second axiom will be that before you can, assess anything, like we mentioned that during management, you evaluate the data. Before you can assess condition of the infrastructure, there is a need to compare different states of the infrastructure. You need to compare different. And so this case, you have Please, can we mute our mics? Thank you. So for structure assessment, I just lost my way. Yeah, so you have the structure assessments as part of the management stage where you evaluate the data you have collected during infrastructure mapping. And before you can make any claim on the condition of the infrastructure, it must be compared to different states. A poor state of the infrastructure should be compared to the same structure, but the fairness stage of that infrastructure. The fairness stage of the infrastructure should be compared to the same structure, but the high performing stage of the infrastructure. That is when you can call out that the condition of the infrastructure is not working. So you just don't see anomalies from your infrastructure mapping and just call out a certain condition. You need to do a comparison first. Then the third assumption is that no sensor does not have flaws. every sensor has its own challenges. And so what matters more when you are mapping infrastructure is the feature extraction technique you are going to use. These are methods that we use to make the data inform us on any decision. It's not the means of collecting the data, but it's how you manipulate the data that matters. And so feature extraction techniques like signal processing, statistical classifications.
Sarah, please turn on your mic.
Sorry, did my mic just go mute now, or for a long time my mic has been
It
mute?
just went to mute now.
Oh,
You can
okay,
continue.
okay. Hey, I would have screamed though. All right, thank you very much. So I was saying that the third assumption is that you don't assume that the means of collecting the data is okay. Like people buy expensive payloads for their LiDAR and think, well, because they've bought billions of dollars of LiDAR machine, the LiDAR does everything and it's okay. No, what is important is also your feature extraction, even how the LiDAR machine will be deployed. It's also very, very important. And so the third assumption is don't settle on the means of collecting the data, settle on what comes after collecting the data. So now we have AI agents. So you see we have separate AIs coming from different angles, which I will tell my young guys in here who are still in the university bachelors, you can investigate these AI agents. So you have ChatGPT, you have Grok, you have Ulama, you have Perplexity. All these, they give you APIs that gives you what we call token. So you can let them be whatever you are mapping as a personal assistant for managing your data. Again, I've not seen this anywhere, but like I said, the session is being futuristic. So you can focus on these AI agents to come together, analyze different portions of the data for you to report on it. And so these are not difficult to do. You can stay one on YouTube to have your own AI agents. People are writing research papers using AI agents. People are conducting incredible studies using AI agents. So, I mean, looking at signal processing, statistical classification is not far from AI agents. Often when we talk about statistical classification, we are talking about machine learning. There is also ensembling. So ensembling is when you stack several machine learning together. So you can bring all the machine learning together, they cast a vote after you have collected your data, they cast a vote to report on what is happening to the infrastructure. These are incredible methods that are out there apart from this signal processing, statistical classification, that our young guys in university or industry can pick it on. And I think AI is cheap now. So if you're in the industry and you want to also use it for your own reporting and other things when it comes to making decision on designing or planning or constructing anything, you can use them. In fact, there are AIs that are doing AutoCAD and then simulations. Okay. The last last but one would be the time and length scales of the structure. They dictate the required properties of the infrastructure. We mentioned that we need to understand if you are doing infrastructure mapping, it's the motivation is to understand the infrastructure. So it's key here that time plays a crucial role during your mapping. Okay, so you need to map it constantly to see how different events have different responses of measurements. Okay, so before you can dictate the properties that infrastructure have. So time is very crucial. The complexity of the structure corresponds with monitoring. So if you're dealing with a very high or sophisticated infrastructure, you also know that the monitoring will be very rigid. Okay. So if you visit those who investigate dams, you see that they use certain robotic technologies, robotic total stations that will take values from certain locations on the dam. And then these are often scheduled to obey time. And then the recordings are saved somewhere for someone to manage after. So the complexity of the structure really correspond with monitoring. All right. It's the same way that you don't also want to handle small infrastructure with a big hammer. Okay, so if it's small, you'd handle it small. If it's big, you handle it big. So yeah. In Accra, I had opportunity to work with one of my incredible professors, Professor Adam. We were developing a smart condition system, and then you could see that the kind of materials we had to deploy to do the road conditions were expensive. The video cameras were expensive for us to get the quality of the pavement. We had to also get high quality tablets to do the recording for the road surface and all that. So yeah, if you are looking at the complexity of the structure, it's important that the monitoring is also complex. Yes, this will be it for the fundamental axioms. We can now dive into key aspect of the data management. So I mentioned we can never have one sensor do it all. So when it comes to the infrastructure mapping, we use different sources to help us get a comprehensive mapping. So one of the things we go through is looking at data integration scheme. You want to know that where all your sources are coming from. There is interoperability. Okay, you do not want to pick something here, another there, and then they are two independent things. They don't speak to each other. You don't want to do that when it comes to this. One of the things which is key that we also look at is storage and scalability. So some data types will show up. I've seen students attach recordings to vehicle type. There is a relationship between how the tire will sound and then the surface of the vehicle. So such data, if you are collecting it for a year and over a network, then it means you have to go large. Okay, so key things like data storage and scalability is also very key. Then we mentioned about compliance, and then so government, if there are policy directed, then we can force some quality and then force change. Because I reserve some comments, but we are very slow to change. We are very slow to change. And the country's problems are people's, milk and honey. So we understand why some of these things are very difficult to introduce. But when we introduce some of these things, they are not to take away the traditional method entirely. The idea is to complement the traditional method and not to take them away entirely. Or if you are the individual working on it, of course, you still should be remunerated. So yeah, or even the models that are existing so far, you still have humans to collect data before the models can perform to places that are high hazards. I'm sure if you know certain infrastructures are in galamsey prone areas, you do not want to go there. And so this is where some of these models will come in, learn over data you have historically to inform you for new locations. Then data security and compliance, same thing on the governance and quality I mentioned. But here we would like to know who is entering the data, who is exiting. We don't want people to play with the data and change some of these data. There are some data for infrastructure. You also be prying on people's privacy. So it's important that policies are directed to know the way forward so that people feel comfortable collecting data. So in Dubai, they have smart city projects where people have agreed to the policy to respond to um, uh, conditions in their room, how the temperature is like, how they feel. So they are okay to respond to these things for them to get in real time what is happening, and then how they intend to give them a 5-star luxurious um, sort of comfort, 5-star luxurious comfort. How I can easily put it. Then one of the key aspects is also automation. So, like we mentioned, if you have sophisticated infrastructure, then you also have sophisticated monitoring. And so, what happens is you get a big data, and this big data can be 10,000s of entry to 100,000s of entry to 1 million. And you do not want to be assigned such task. So this is when you bring in automation and machine actionable processes. Like I mentioned earlier, you can now bring in ensembles, you can bring in explainable AI, and you can bring in something like AI agents to help you in all this. I reviewed a paper from Transport Research Board, TRB, and it was very interesting. The person was mapping a traffic flow. So part of traffic flow, you would want to know traffic behavior, or part of ITS, you want to know traffic user behavior. So there was a car following model, and then he was using explainable AI to tell us which of the data parameters is influencing the threshold for a vehicle to change from one lane to the other. It was a really incredible paper. It's not published yet. That work was really incredible. So part of the database, which is central for all this, when you're talking about database, you can talk about MySQL, you can talk about PostgreSQL, you can talk about MongoDB database. Then with the integration, where you have multiple sources from different areas, you can bring in Talent, Informatica, and then Portable. And then with cloud storage, we mentioned that certain data types will bring about scalability, or the infrastructure mapping will need some online, which is real-time information to collect data. We have these cloud platforms that provide services. So AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, they are all like cloud platforms that can house some of these data, or can even be helping you with your real-time data transmission. The big data platforms, we have the Hadoop, Apache Spark. These are all big data platforms that will help you handle your big data. Okay, so my last point before I demo some few things, I often like to demonstrate what I discuss. So the challenges we often face is data quality. So we have data that are incomplete, inaccurate, or inconsistent. When we start the mapping, we started so nice, but with the cost, we can't continue. And so we often suffer incomplete data inaccuracies and then inconsistencies. Then when it comes to data integration, um, different systems will be giving you data. If it was not really factored in planning, then the different data will not speak to each other to help you in your decision making. And so often where we also face as academians is the data integration part. You have different data that can speak to itself. They can't speak for themselves. Then scalability is also an issue, handling growing volumes of data. Now, data storage is expensive. Even cloud is not cheap. So if we are making policy for annual infrastructure mapping like transport or routes, what it means is that when it keeps going 5, 6 years, the amount you'll be paying for the cloud will not change. Sorry, it will not be constant. You will change the costing, and then the price will keep changing because a large volume of data will now be coming in. So yeah, that's also one of the challenges. Then the compliance and security will be the policies that should be directed to make data accessible to all, so we don't have to pick similar data and pay for it. And then the quality of the data itself. There should be like a laid down standard for everyone to follow in terms of what they are trying to design, what they are trying to map. So moderator, if I have your permission, I want to take the slide down and then show on my screen certain demonstration if you don't mind.
All right, sure.
Okay, thank you. So please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we are in Google Colab right now, and in Google Colab, these are some of the demonstration I would like to show. I mentioned earlier that we have two categories in how we collect the data: local, global. So this is a local type, trying to pick utilities in the location. So I have ID 123, and then the 123 that I have, one corresponds to electric poles, two correspond with telecom, and then another one for electric. Okay. Then so ID, sorry, this is ID, so three. So ID here means they are unique identifiers for electric and telecom poles. The location is 00. So as a GIS personnel, when you go for the map, and then you have to pick their GPS locations as well. So we ID them in numeric because often when we want to apply them in your analytics, text analytics don't do you any good favor. So you always have to transform them to numeric. So we try to run this, and we have a nice table that shows the data that we have collected. So if you also have a database, which is SQL, you can execute to save this in a database. Okay. So when you run, there is an indication that electric pool and telecom and electric have been saved inside your database. Okay, so we mentioned that your infrastructure map is not only limited to routes, but here I'll start with routes and then move on to next. This is also one of the key challenges that you face in the central database when you are doing your infrastructure mapping. So you realize that the personnel, after collecting data, they fail to punch in certain values. So you get null values. You can always do away with them and then focus on the most important ones that you want to work with. So after the person has collected data, we have good, fair, none, traffic volume 500, 300, none. but we can't work with them. These are null values, and so we can write to handle null values, code to handle null values. And so then we can have our table only present to us where there is a complete database entry. Thank you very much. This is where I end it. Thank you for listening. If there are questions, I'll be here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tara Enchi, for your presentation. Senior colleagues, fellows,
Thank
facilitator has brought his presentation to a close. If there's any questions, let's kindly drop them either in the chat box or you will raise your hand, then the host will call you for the question to be delivered. So, Doctor, somebody is asking if you can share your code and data sets.
Yes, I can. I'll put it on the WhatsApp page.
So Irene, Doctor said he will share the codes and the data set in our WhatsApp platform. We are still waiting for questions for it to be addressed. But before then, let's do a recap of what has been shared across, and we thank our facilitator for his precise and concise presentation. We all know he started by defining what an infrastructure is, and he listed some examples being bridges, defense systems, our traffic system, and the rest. And he made us know some of the importance that this infrastructure mapping and database management are. We're talking about location, we're talking about inspection, we're talking about visualizing, and he mentioned that it can either be in real time or want to, because we want to analyze the behavior and make an informed decision. In statistics going on where China and US are allies in prepared structures, you have to make an informed decisions. We have engineering, the geospatial aspects, and the transportation engineering. Then he made us know the objectives of his presentation. That we would want to know infrastructure intelligence, because when we know where our infrastructure are, how they've been mapped, and its conditions, it will give us intelligence as to how to maintain or either make it better. We are also, he made us also know that, yes, we are doing this for smart mapping. We are doing this for smart mapping. In the chat box, somebody is asking if you can share your slide with us as well.
Yes, I can share my slides. Yes, I can share them.
JK is also asking, do you have any short courses on asset management in your institution?
We have one from Volvo. It was free, but now I think you have to pay something small. The free is over. Yeah, so maybe you can start that 101 and then join us. We have a new program coming up for traffic simulation and AI. So that will also come in with infrastructure mapping and management. So yeah, I mean, you can start with the 101 so that you don't jump straight into the traffic simulation and AI, because those ones we targeted the industry players and students who are in their final years and um, high degree students. Yeah, that was the target.
All right, JK, I hope your question is answered. Someone is also asking, what can GGS do when it comes to infrastructure mapping and management in Ghana? All right, Isaac, I think this question is to GGS and not to
Yeah.
But Doc, if you have any submission to you can carry it across.
I can't speak for GGS. I know GGS has everything under control, if you ask me, but this one day I can't speak. I know people there are great, incredible people in GGS that can make this even easy. So yeah, this is for GGS to answer.
All right, so Isaac, the president of GGS is in our midst and he has taken notice to your question. I think it will be addressed appropriately. You are still receiving questions to be addressed. If you have any questions that you want our presenter to address it, you can put it across. As we wait for questions with the keynotes that we picked from the presentation. So we got to know that what data are we supposed to collect when we are doing infrastructure mapping? We would want to know the condition of the structure, the performances, its capacity, and how safe this infrastructure is. Then he zoomed in into database. He said that database, it's just a central base or your central point where you are getting all your data, so that when you're having any analysis, you can do your query and the rest. So database is very much important when it comes to infrastructure management. Then some of the technologies that he mentioned that you can use in infrastructure mapping are the IoT sensors, which will give you real-time data, and the drones, the LiDAR, photogrammetry, and the likes will also give you offline data so that later on you can analyze and make information out of your data. So, Doc, somebody is asking, how can we integrate already physically mapped data using GPS data into AI management systems to simulate trends in managing that infrastructure? I come again with a question. How can we integrate already physically mapped data using GPS data into AI management systems to simulate trends in managing that infrastructure? What's your Doc?
Yeah, if I understand the person, it means like there is already an existing data that has location data, and he wants to understand how you can leverage AI into managing that infrastructure. Okay. I don't know if that's what the person wants to convey. Mr. Ting, is that very
No.
okay? Okay, so uh, I would start with I'll start with the solution, because one of the challenges that you can have a physically mapped data that is struggling. It's incomplete, it's inconsistent, and all that. And so what I figured from my experience is that outside they can do work with surrogate data. So if you have already an existing data, you can play with surrogate data to see how the infrastructure can be managed. When I say surrogate data, what it means is you can give yourself some upper limit and lower limit to see what the data can do if you try to manipulate them. Let's say when you go up, and you come down, what will change? What would you see? So this is like the surrogate data, but these are not like data that are actually on the ground, and AI can help you do that. The second part will be to hit the nail right on the head. Will be that if you want to manage some of these things, it's essential that you have time in your data, okay? Because you want to see how the infrastructure responds to data that are dynamic, like dynamic response of the infrastructure when you are recording your data, like how they are measured will influence the trend you are looking for. And so it's key that time must be a factor. If your GPS data doesn't include time, then you can't say much about trend, okay, like how you put the question. But if you want to look at certain conditions and your GPS data sort of capture that data, you can play, AI can come in with surrogate data, as in the same asset can be looked elsewhere with similar condition. AI can do that, bring that data and see what will happen to your infrastructure, something like that. I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you, Doc. Someone is saying that, hi, I'm a final year student of UG, studying geography and focusing mainly on GIS and emotions. Can I also make this infrastructure maps, or I need skills in coding before?
Coding, you can hold on with the coding. Get at least familiarize with yourself with what is already working in the system first. And already tools that can come together to give you incredible results. When you get that going, then you can go fully into the coding. Coding takes a lot of time, and so you can code, but if you miss the important tools and what they can do, well, it wouldn't help you. So I would encourage you that get the GIS and remote sensing and like strengthen yourself in what is already working. And then you can, when you've mastered that, and then you begin to face problems that require customization, that is when you give yourself coding. Yeah, give yourself time for coding.
All right, thank you, Doc. Abde Karim is saying that he wished the presentation should be in a practical guide than theory form.
Okay. Well, I
So,
tried to demonstrate to you how collection of data comes in as data frame and then linked to a database, Abdul. Yeah.
all right. Participants, are there any questions to our doc concerning the presentation he has given this afternoon? All right, so we continue with our recap as we await if there's any other question. We also learn in the presentation how we can conduct this infrastructure mapping and database management. Having gotten to know how important infrastructure mapping is, how do you conduct it? So he said we need to know the current state of the infrastructure in question. That will inform us how we go about and the data we need to gather to bring into context the spatial aspect of the infrastructure. Where is it located? Then data sources. He mentioned earlier that there are different when doing this infrastructure mapping because the data are sitting in silos. Therefore, we need to bring them together so as to make any informed decision. Then when it comes to the data inputs, we need to concentrate on the key parameters. There will be so many information that we can receive or gather, but what are the key parameters in our analysis? Then data standards. We need to meet the standards, the regulatory and compliance requirements concerning data management infrastructure mapping. Let me go into the chat and see if there's any other. All right, so Aaron is saying that I commend TerraEntry for his great content and delivery, especially for the area of AI, interesting and rising technology. I would like to ask if he has ever encountered a situation where geospatial data needed to be enhanced, as in multiplied to make up for volume for machine learning, and was done. How was the results? Was it desirable? So don't you encounter the situation where geospatial data needed to be enhanced, as in
Okay, Mr. Ote, your mic is not doing as well, but if I can come in now.
up and if it was done, how was the result? Get the question.
Yes, it's clear to me. Yeah.
All right.
So this one I will be careful to speak on it. That in a sense it's context based. Okay, of course, if you are looking at humanitarian problems, like maybe how a drug is performing, I will not encourage um, using synthetic data. But what I was trying to say is with the infrastructure, when you need certain things like large volume data, you can always create a random distribution based on the behavior of the already historic data you have. You can always create a synthetic data that behave to a certain distribution. And then you can use that distribution to generate data that acts as surrogates to inform what will happen if you change, certain things. Of course, when you do that, you can easily also get things like overfitting or underfitting. But the wisdom is to know which model will sort of fall in between so that it will not be that the data is only working for the randomly generated data you have. There is this platform that does very well with synthetic data called Mokaru, Mockarw. So Mokaru is based on your context, will learn the distribution that will work with your data so that you can generate large volume of data and then use it with what you already have. So yeah, but I'll be like I mentioned, this is limited to when you have a problem like inconsistent, incomplete data. Please do not use this approach for humanitarian problems or anything that requires first-class engineering. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions? We are still waiting for questions to be addressed. All right, so we continue with our recap. All right, so someone is asking, can QField software, both on Android and iOS, for QGIS be used as an alternative to the data collection tool you used? I'm asking because it also supports real-time data recording using GPS tracking.
Oh yeah, yes, you can use some of these open platforms like Qfield. Yeah. So what will happen is maybe what it means is you're using Qfield to collect your inventory data. Perhaps if you're focused on road, then afterwards you can, bring it on your platform to manage it. Or if you have already linked it and you have good internet, then you can have it already synchronizing. So yes, Qfield is part of the platform that we use for certain works like this. Yeah, you are spot on.
All right. So you got to know also that data acquisition can either be local or global. And these are some of the key aspects of data management. Since you are getting data or capturing data from different sources, you should think about data integration, where you are going to store your data, the quality of your data processing and analysis. Data security should be also important aspects of data management. And because you are going to have data growth, you should think also about automation. There's some basic assumptions that made us aware that when you want to do infrastructure mapping and database management, you need to consider that all the structures or the structure you're going to map has flaws. If not, you're not going to do any mapping to ascertain either the capacity, how safety it is, etc. So there are flaws in all structures. The first assumption we need to think about. The no sensor is 100% error-free. So we should also have in mind that yes, there are defects in the sensors. That is why we go into and do analysis, get the data and process. Time and length is also a essential factor. So we should also have that in mind as one of the assumptions. Then when it comes to complex infrastructures, you get exactly what you are looking for. Lastly, the challenges that we face in this sector, that is mapping and data management, is one, how quality the data is, because it's of cost. It is very expensive in maintaining quality. Then data integration, because if it's not factored in stage, then it's going to see, because the data is going to go, we need to think about how we're going to store it, and that is a major challenge as well. Then compliance and security. Who's going to have access to the data? Is the data in its standards as the notes we derived from the presentation made by Dr. Tera. Honorable participants, is there any question? Doc, as we are waiting for any other questions, you can prepare to give your remarks or your last statement if there is. So someone is asking, please, which GIS software did you use in making your map? I'm sorry if you've already mentioned this earlier in your presentation, but I came in a bit late.
Oh, so there were no maps produced. It's Google Colab. So I'm just highlighting how you collect field data and then you connect them to your database. So yeah, there was no maps made, but it was just telling you how you can collect your data and then have it stored in a database. Yeah. Then you manage some of the wrongful entries. So that was what we basically did.
All right. And I hope you've been answered. If there's no further question, Doc, if you have any last remark or
Okay, so if I'll say anything, what I did is just scratching the surface. There is more to it, especially when you are treating infrastructure map and management in a case. If you are limiting it to maybe tracking utility pipelines, so if you're looking at dam break analysis, if you're looking at the rails, the tracks. So different infrastructure mapping will have different sort of methodology. So I'm sure for those that are interested, there is more for us to dive in and then and do this. Anybody who would like to go into this field, there is more for you to do, and that would be my remarks.
all right, thank you very much, Doctor, for your time. And as we bring the presentation of our CPD meeting today to an end, I would like to thank all participants for making time and consideration to join us today. We've been enlightened on the topic infrastructure mapping and data management. You can take it up, do more research, more studies. Doctor is open. You can get in touch with him so that the discussion can go on. Until we meet again, have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.